Hi art students, welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday. We're actually focusing on Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is a contemporary artist. He was alive when I was alive, although I wasn't very old. I was still in elementary school when he died tragically at a very early age. But he is an artist that was alive when I was alive, so I find that very interesting. So let's talk about him. First of all, he was born as Andrew Warhol. And he actually changed his name to Andy Warhol because he wanted to become a star. And he thought that by changing his name, that would make him more popular. He led the visual arts movement known as pop art. And pop stands for popular culture. So he did things like he created art revolving around the celebrity culture. So you can see a lot of his artwork, like Marilyn Monroe is a subject matter, Mick Jagger, Elvis, a lot of those pieces involve celebrities. He also did consumer culture. So he made advertisements for like Macintosh and Lifesavers, and he was really big as a graphic design artist in magazines back in the 60s. He also made artwork for everyday objects. So the Campbell soup can is one of his most famous pieces of pop art. And that is exactly a part like what made Andy Warhol a part of the pop art movement. Lichtenstein is another pop art movement artist, and you can look him up and check out his art. He's the one that has the onomatopoeia words, so like pow or zap, and then he has like little boxes, like speech boxes around or speech bubbles around those words, or he has really close up comic faces, cartoon faces with the dots on it. That's Roy Lichtenstein's work as well, part of the pop art movement. So basically pop art includes those celebrity culture, consumer culture, everyday object culture, and bright contrasting colors. Did you know that he was also a pioneer for digital art? He was one of the original digital artists. In fact, his first model for a digital computer-made image was Blondie's singer Debbie Harry. And he actually was on stage with her, and she sat across from the computer from him, and he was making a digital image of Debbie Harry. Wait, who is Blondie? The tide is high and I'm holding on. I'm gonna be your number one. I'm not the kind of girl who gives up just like that. Oh no. Still nothing? Google it. Super cool. So today we're actually going to be doing some digital art. Fun fact, we have some iPad Pros that are going to be coming to our art room for the next school year and school years beyond that. And we get to actually create digital art on the iPad. So if I were to create art in my traditional visual arts classroom, I would use these neon watercolor paints, and I would use the black watercolor paper to really get it to pop off that. In fact, that's what I did yesterday when I created my own version of Campbell soup cans for the pop art. But today we're going to be creating digital images using Procreate and SketchMe. And so I'm going to take you through those on the iPad and kind of give you a little taste of what Procreate is. There are lots of free apps out there. Procreate is a paid-for app. It's $9.99. Well worth it, in my opinion, for that $10. You pay it once. There's no like upgrading charges or anything like that. There are different brush packs and things that you could purchase for it, but there's a lot of free brushes out there too. So Procreate, if you have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, if you're looking to get into digital art, Procreate is definitely the way to go. All right, so here we are. We have our iPad Pro. And we have our Procreate app, and we also have our SketchMe app. So both of them are apps that you can get on the App Store. Like I said, Procreate is $9.99. SketchMe was the best app that I could find that was free, that didn't have watermarks in it. You can see if I bring up photos, I was kind of trying to do some different things, and this one, Pencil Sketch for iPhone, actually ended up with this watermark on it, which I wasn't a huge fan of. So I decided to try to find some apps that were free that didn't cost or didn't have the watermarks on it. I also found an app called Abstract You, which was cool, but it actually did the color combinations for you, which if you really don't want to create art or have to create art, it does it all for you. That's fine. I just really wanted to create my own art today, so that's what we're going to be doing. So the other thing is you can create pop art on your device with any object that you want. Like I said, Andy Warhol really looked at everyday objects, and he looked at celebrities. So I could have chosen a celebrity to have as my subject for today. And you can look into my photos that I actually went in and tried to take some pictures of some everyday objects that I had around the house. And I've created some different kind of cool Sketch Me things to go along with that. I also did a self-portrait and went into the Sketch Me app and created some different things. So we're going to do some explorations within Procreate with these apps to see if we can't get the effects that we want to get with pop art in our digital art. So the other thing that I have is this pop corners, which I thought was so very appropriate because pop art and pop corners, yeah, they share a name. So I'm going to take a picture of our pop corners as well and show you how to use the Sketch Me app within on our iPad. So I took a picture, it's saved on my camera roll, and then I open up the Sketch Me app. So once you get into the app, there's a camera up in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to use my photo library to find a picture that I want to create the pop art kind of feel within my iPad. So now I have this picture in there, and you can decide by pinching to zoom in or out where you want to have your picture on your iPad. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how big I want to have this. And then once you figure that out, there's these dots that are along the side here. So use the arrows to kind of go in between and figure out which one of those effects you actually want for your art. These are kind of cool. They actually give you a little bit of color in there as well. And once you've done that, let's say I really like the effect of having just that black and white, but I don't really like how that looks. I like the wood grain in there, but I didn't get enough of the detail on the chip bag. So I can go in and look at the threshold. And so what that means is I can toggle along here, and that actually changes how much of that contrast you're gonna get. So I can decide, oh, I really like this because it has, I can see the chips on there, it has sea salt, it has popcorners, and I can really get some good contrast with that. Or if that was too much, then I can try to get kind of a nice balance in the middle of that, which may or may not be the easiest things to do. And you can then come up with your composition within your Sketch Me app. One of the things that I really like about this is it gets pretty pixelated. And if we're going towards what the digital art that Andy Warhol did, his art was really pixelated because that's what was happening in the 80s. Digital art it's a thing, but it didn't have the kind of like vectorization that we have currently with digital art. It's super pixelated. And if you go back to video games and anything from the 80s that had to do with computers or digital anything, it's really pixelated. Even our printers from back then were dot matrix printers, and it printed in dots. Like, that was a thing. So I really like how these have kind of that, you can see the little squares and the pixelation that's happening in the picture. So once I get it to what I would like to save, I click on this little arrow down here, and then I'm going to save it to my photo library, and it's saved there. So now I can get out of Sketch Me, and I'm going to go into Procreate. So Procreate has a bunch of different, once you get into the gallery, you can decide what kind of art that you're going to create within Procreate. You can add a new piece of art. You can add a photo into your art. So let's say I want to work on this Pop Corners art here. I'm going to select that as my photo, and it opens it up as a brand new piece of art. Let's talk Procreate really quick. So over here, this round circle in the upper right hand corner, this is your color palette. And you can decide to create your own palette. They come with palettes that are already in there. You can download palettes. People have already set some different palettes. You can set any of these as your default at any time, and then you can create, like, add colors to your palette anytime that you would want to, okay? And then you can go back and have a disc and choose colors based upon where it's at along the disc there. Okay, so that's your colors. The next piece on Procreate is your layers. Now, layers are so very important, and here's how I equate layers. So when I talk about my acrylic paintings, I talk about that I paint one layer, let it dry, and then I paint layers over that. Well, this in Procreate is like a speed dryer. So if I create a layer and then I decide that I want to have a layer over that, then I just select this and I can add another layer, and that layer one now has completely dried. And so I don't have to worry about trying to let my paint dry anymore. I just keep creating layers upon layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. And one of my examples is this piece of art that I created. And if I open it up, you can see the many layers that I added into it along the side here. And basically it's so that I didn't have to wait for my painting to dry. I just continued to add layers and layers and layers and layers to it, okay? So let's go back to our Pop Corners art. The other thing that's really cool about Procreate is that I can create something, and then, like Andy Warhol did, is he mass produced it. He actually had like a screen blotting or a ink blotting system to copy things and paste it. Well, Procreate has a really simple way to copy and paste, which I'll show you in just a second. This is your eraser. This is your blending tool, and then here are all of your brushes. So with your brushes, they all come, the Procreate comes with all of the brushes that you can see all the way down to water. And then, like I said, you can find and import and buy your many brushes. I have decided to find free brushes, which has allowed me to do some really cool things, like there's a tie-dye brush where you can create your own tie-dye. There's also a glitter brush where you can create glitter drawings. There's, I don't even know what other kinds of brushes there are the chalk brush that I've used to create some pieces of art, okay? So there's more, but that's really what's happening in that I've been using within Procreate. So I'm going to go back to my Untitled Pop Corners work here. I want to copy and paste this into a new piece of art. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I actually want it to be, I want to make 4 of the same thing so that I can add different colors to make it almost look like Andy Warhol's art, okay? So I have it selected, and all I have to do is take my 3 fingers and I swipe down, and I'm going to copy my selection. So now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into the gallery, and I'm going to start a new piece of art that's screen sized, okay? And I'm going to swipe my 3 fingers down again on here, and I'm going to paste it. So now on my screen-sized art, I can take and I can put this anywhere, however I want it, okay? And if I want it to be just like this, I can now copy this and, oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh, so easy enough. I can just put 2 fingers down and I can get rid of it, and it starts me all over again. Okay, so I'm in my gallery image. I want to paste that image. Okay, I want to make it the size that I want. Okay, and now once I have the size that I want, and honestly, I've been using my Apple Pencil for this because it's almost like a mouse, so you can use it a little bit easier. You can decide, use your pencils along the edges to make it bigger or smaller. What I'm noticing here is that it's actually taking up too much of the space, so I want to crop this. So how I crop it is I select it, and down here on the bottom, I can decide if I want to freehand, which means that I can just freehand it, or I can do a rectangle. I'm going to clear that. Or I can do a rectangle. So let's say I want to copy, and this is my now piece that I want, okay? And then I'm going to select that small piece. So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and paste just that piece. So now just that piece is the art that I'm going to have. So, and it actually creates a new layer for you when you do that, which is really great, okay? So I can go back to this layer here and decide, you know what, I'm gonna select this guy. I don't want it there. I don't want this guy to be there anymore. And I honestly can even just go in and I can delete that layer. And now I have my copy, my selection, and my pasted one. Oops, and I started drawing without wanting to draw. Okay, so let's go back to this layer. Yep, here's my selection. What I've decided to do now is I actually need to select this guy, and I'm in a rectangle select him. So now I have my 4 Popcorners pictures within my piece of art, and you can see I have 4 different layers. Now I'm going to add a layer on top of that, and what I'm going to do is add in some colors. So here are the things that I need to decide. I need to decide where I want to have, what I actually want to have pop out. No pun intended. And one of the things that I actually need to do is I need to create a layer of black on top of this, because what's going to happen is if I create a layer, let's say I'm going to use, let's go to inking and marker, and you can test out your brush to see what color it is. Yay, that looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and I want it to be purple. Let's do a bright purple. And I create, oh, and the brush size is down here, so I can decide how big or small I want my marker to be, okay? And I can also decide how much opaque I want it to be. If I want it to cover up the whole thing or start to get translucent, that's what happens over here, okay? So I'm choosing my brush size and making sure I'm on the correct layer. Yes, I am. And I start coloring or painting on this. And what happens is those cool little dots that were already on there have now disappeared. Well, that's not awesome. That doesn't make me happy. So let's say that I want to then take my image and make it go behind there, okay? And let's say I want this layer to go behind all of them because I want to be able to see it. Well, it disappears because this layer, all of these layers, that white is going to cover all of it up. So what's going to have to happen is I need to create a layer that has and in fact, I need to group all of these layers together. So that's something that I'm going to do. So to select your layer, you pull in from the left, and then I can select group. So now all of these in my grouped layer, if I were to select them, okay, I could select, I should be able to select all of them. And now I can move them all as a group, okay? So I didn't want to do that there. So I'm going to go back and put my 2 fingers down. So now all of those layers are going to work together as a group. So now I need to go in and I'm actually going to use my marker and I'm going to use black, and I'm going to figure out what parts of this I want to have show up, okay? And as I go through this, one of the things that I could have done is I could have created a layer and then repeated that layer and done that already, but I kind of like the idea of doing it as a full piece of art. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to make sure I'm on that layer 5 now, and you can zoom in, and I really want this to pop out. So as the artist, you can decide, and as I look at this, the color, the value is not as black as I'm making it. And if I decide like, actually, I'd really like to match that color value, all I would have to do is take my finger and go over the area where I want to match it. And so I want it to be that gray. And then I would take my finger, and now that part of it is actually that gray. My marker is that color gray now, okay? And so I'm going over that now. It's kind of hard, you can see it now a little bit better. It's not covering up that black. And you would have to do it in a new layer. So all that stuff that I just did, I want to disappear. If I ever am like, gosh, I don't know what that actually looks like, I can turn those layers off and I can see what it's going to look like. Turn those layers back on and go back into my art and keep creating and kind of outlining it. Cool thing about Procreate is if I decide that I want a straight line or an arched line, if I hold down my pencil, or let's say I want to make this a connected straight line here, I just hold down my pencil and it actually makes a straight line for me. So, or you can put it back to the curved line that you had. So that's a cool thing with Procreate. Okay, so I want to fill all this area in with black. So what I'm going to do is take my dot, put my dot in there, and it fills it all in with black. So now I have, for the most part, the areas that I want filled in that I'm going to bring out that are in my pop art piece here. So I'm going to show that group, okay? And what happened when I did that was my sea salt went away. So I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to put my 2 fingers down. Okay, and you can see that this wasn't closed. There was something in here that wasn't completely closed off that caused it to go and bleed into that. So let's try it again and see if I can, there, that's better. So there's my sea salt. And I'm going to show, oh, my popcorners. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that again. And I'm going to show this layer. So what I would want to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and I'm going to go over the popcorners here because that's really important for me to keep that out. So I think I have what I want. So I always check it by making that layer disappear. All right, yeah, that's looking like I want it to look. So what I can do is I can get rid of that layer by deleting it, or if I want to keep it around, I can totally keep it around too. It's no big deal. And I can also take a look here and kind of figure out, oh, okay, what do I want to add to my layer? Okay, I might want to add in a little bit of the details here where I can decide to add in a little bit more to give a little bit more defined edges of those Popcorners chips. Now I can start adding colors to it. So I can go into this grouped layer here. I'm going to delete it. I don't want those anymore. I have my Popcorners how I want it. I have my cool contrast of my lights and my darks, and they're in 4 different layers, and I actually want to keep all 4 of those layers just like that. And if I want to have layers that happen underneath each of those layers, each of the other layers, then I can drag those colors as I draw them underneath. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, okay? So I'm going to add a layer on top of this guy here, and I am going to use that bright purple, kind of like what I was doing before. I'm going to increase my brush size, and you can see that it's going to spill over a little bit. That's okay. That is actually a part of the work that he did. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that when you had colors on there that it did that. I'm not a fan. I'm not going to use that brush. I'm going to use a different brush. Let's see here. I'm going to try this guy and see what happens when I do that. And I want to decrease my brush size. Okay, so this is going to give kind of more brushy strokes, but that's okay. I'm going to fill it in and go a little bit beyond, and I'm okay with that. Okay, so I have this layer here, right? And oops, I shouldn't have done that. That was already on a layer. I thought I added a layer. Let's add a layer. Let's try that. All right, here we go. All right, so I wanted to create that color, but when I have this layer, I now want it to be underneath all of the layers. So now you get to see those pencil marks behind it, okay? So now that I know, okay, this is definitely underneath all of those layers, and I can keep working in this layer and add different colors to it and create different color concepts underneath the black and white that we had. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add in some pop colors to my Popcorners images in my digital art. So there you can see I've added in, since I created all of those layers, I was able to put colors underneath what was happening and put some colors over, and really just tried to pick some bright contrasting colors. And while they're not exactly the same, it kind of emulated the same areas in there. And I created a modern day pop corners pop art in Procreate. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. It's been so much fun to be able to teach you all while I've been at home, and I hope you have the best summer, and I look forward to art with all of you next year.